I'm Lisa Fletcher, and you're in the stream. Today, will sitting in a school classroom become a relic of the past? We look at the future of learning as the use of technology continues to grow in our everyday lives. Our digital producer, Malika Bilal, is across the table from me, as usual. She'll be looking out for your live feedback throughout the program. Malika, I've been looking at the Facebook comments coming in and the tweets, and we've got a lot of online folks that aren't super keen on online education. What's going on?
I'm finding that. Now, for this being an online community, we're finding people that are pretty skeptical about online learning. So for those of you at home, whether you're skeptical or whether you're pro online learning, let us know. Use the hashtag AJStream.
We are very pleased to have in studio with us Sal Khan. He is the founder and executive director of the Khan Academy. He is also the author of the book, The One World Schoolhouse, Education Reimagined, which came out today. It's his vision and blueprint for how online technology can and should play a role in educating communities around the globe. Sal, welcome to the stream.
Great to be here.
The show relies on the participation of our community, and there are all kinds of ways that you can be a part of it. One is Google+. These folks added the stream to their circles, so in just a few minutes, they'll be talking directly with Sal on our show. Add us to your circles, and on a future program, you too can be in the stream.
Hello world, this is Brother Ali. I'm a hip-hop artist out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'm in the stream. Stay right here.
The U.S. public education system is under increasing attack from parents, students, and teachers alike. Poor performance is usually blamed on a lack of funding, long hours for underpaid faculty, and increasing classroom sizes. Education reform is constantly in the headlines as statistics like these continue to emerge. Take a look. To gain an edge, many students are turning to the web to supplement their lessons. One virtual classroom in particular is transforming education. Growing from a few simple videos, the Khan Academy now has more than 3,400, covering topics like biology, chemistry, math, and physics. The website gets nearly 3 million unique users a month and is the most popular online learning site. It's also used in more than 15,000 classrooms worldwide, which raises the question of whether traditional methods of education are becoming obsolete. Is the current model broken? And what role will online learning play in the future for America's kids and students around the globe? To help us answer these questions via Skype is Robert Murphy. He's a social scientist with the Center for Technology and Learning. He co-authored a report for the U.S. Department of Education on online learning services. He is also currently evaluating the Khan Academy for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bob, welcome to the stream.
Thank you, Lisa.
So, Sal, let's set this up properly for you here. You've got 3 degrees from MIT. You've got an MBA from Harvard. You were managing a hedge fund, and now you're suddenly the poster child for innovating education. Explain to people who don't know how you got to this spot.
And I was an analyst at a hedge fund. Otherwise, I'd be wearing nicer clothing. I obviously had an interest in it most of my life, and several times, my background was in software. Even in college, I started writing learning software, and I spent the fellowship doing that as well. But the catalyst was my cousin who was having trouble, and so in math, so I started remotely tutoring her. She was in New Orleans, and I was in Boston, and once I started doing that and I was kind of more engaged with the problem, I started writing software for her and then later her brothers, and word got around in the family that free tutoring was happening. So you fast forward about 2 years and I still was working as an analyst. I had about 15 cousins that I was tutoring around the country after
Uncle
work
Sal's
every day.
Good with numbers.
Cousin Sal.
Cousin Sal, right.
Yeah, and I was pretty proud of the software. I was showing it to a friend, had a database that could give people practice and things like that. But I said I was having trouble. I only had like half an hour every day after work to work with all of these cousins. And a friend said, why don't you make some tutorials, put them on YouTube, it might be useful for your cousins. And I said, no, that's silly. That's YouTube's for cats playing piano, not for serious math. But I gave it a shot, and I put it out there. My cousins enjoyed it, and it became clear that people who were not my cousins were starting to use it in different ways, and teachers were starting to use it in different ways.
And you eventually ended up quitting your job to do that full time,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, fast forward to 2009, I had trouble focusing on my day job. We set it up as a not-for-profit with the idea that, no matter what, we want this to be able to reach everyone in the world and not be kind of, that's the focus as opposed to some kind of profit motive. And a year later, we got funding, and it's from Ann and John Doerr, Bill and Melinda Gates, Google, with the goal not just me making videos and translating into the languages of the world, but try to push the envelope of what can be done. And we don't think everything can be done with technology. I think there'll always be a huge need for a teacher in a classroom. But what we can think about, what can we do on the virtual side, and hopefully how can we use that to make the classroom even more valuable.
And you've said that you think that the current system is broken. I'm curious, in what way is it broken, and how do you think Khan can plug into that and help fix it?
Yeah, and I'm very careful there, because there's a lot, you hear, there's a lot of cynicism in people saying the system is broken, and they're focused, we need school reform, and they'll talk about, student-teacher ratios, or they'll talk about this policy or that policy. And a lot of those conversations are important to have, but what the focus of this book is, and the way we think about it is, well, let's take a step back and think about the system, not just how that system is implemented. And the system is really one we've inherited from the Prussians, a country that does not exist anymore, 200 years ago. And it's really this, and we assume it's a given. We assume that's what education is, that students should go in these age-based cohorts, and kind of like an assembly line, every year they're pushed forward. Even if they start having gaps in their knowledge, they have less than great understanding, they're just forced to move forward. Teachers are forced to kind of work at a state-mandated pace. Most of what happens in most classrooms, not all, but in a lot of classrooms, are teachers kind of lecturing, broadcast lecturing. There are a lot of innovative teachers who aren't doing that. But what we're saying, well, let's rethink all of this. Can we have it so students work at their own pace? Can we have it so that class time is interactive, so that students are struggling, they're doing problems, students are able to help each other, students are able to actually have one-on-one or small group attention time with the teacher? What we say is that the important thing, student-to-teacher ratio is important, because it's a proxy for how much attention each student gets. But the real thing that we care about is student to valuable time with the teacher ratio, because that really measures how much interaction you're getting. So
Bob Murphy, you're evaluating the Khan Academy for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I'm curious what metrics you're using, because what Sal is talking about and his innovations are really different from the structures that teachers work within in their classrooms now.
Yeah, so we're doing a series of data collections over the last 2 school years, continuing into this school year. We are working with teachers, interviewing teachers, observing the classrooms, and looking for those types of interactions that Sal is talking about. And what we do see is in classrooms where Khan Academy is being used, we are seeing teachers spending more time walking around the room, working with individual students, breaking out, in some cases breaking out or gathering smaller groups of students to work with them on a particular topic they may be struggling with, while the other kids are working at their own pace on Khan Academy, filling in gaps or going ahead of the class where the class is in terms of the curriculum. So we're doing a series of observations, interviews, surveys, as well as looking at test scores when they're available.
Well, there are people here that agree with you, Sal, and your mode of operandus. We asked our community if they think the current educational system is broken. Now, Sincerely tweets back, the current education system fails to identify strengths or talents of individuals in the arts or specific academic fields. Do you find that that's an accurate assessment?
Yeah, and I'll take it even one step further. A lot, there are the arts, which are clearly the arts, but then even in things like math and science, our existing system, it measures you on things. Can you factor a quadratic? Can you do it? But I compare that to being that relative to a true mathematician is like seeing how good is someone going to be an artist based on how well they mix paint, or how well they can tell color, or how well they're going to be an athlete based on how flexible they are. It's a prerequisite maybe. These are tools in your toolkit, but they don't measure their creativity, the actual ability to contribute. And so a lot of what we believe in and what I talk about there is when you get to a self-paced reality and you break out of this Prussian model, it actually opens up class time so that you can give room for creativity. You can let students write a novel or paint a picture or build a robot or whatever else.
But on the other hand, there have been criticisms, and on that I'd like to go to our Google Plus Hangout, where Dan Meyer is speaking to us from California, and Dan is a doctoral student at Stanford. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, thank you guys. The value of a huge bank of video lectures seems really obvious in the developing world, or if there is no good teacher on hand. But what about if there is a good teacher in the classroom? What then in the past in your TED Talk you recommended, say, a flipped model, but then moved from that later on to more of an in-class, students watching lectures at their own pace, at their own level. And then more recently, it seems like you're emphasizing more the adaptive testing engine. So what are the best ways you've seen good classroom teachers use the video lectures?
Yeah, so the overarching theme here is for class time to be as interactive as possible. And what we're discovering, we've gone into schools with some ideas of our own, and what we're seeing is in every school context it's different. It's different depending on what the teacher wants to do, where they kind of view, where they can add the most value. Some of the really exciting ones I've seen are in Marlboro School, is an all-girls school in Los Angeles, a very good one, and they're the calculus teacher, incredible teacher, he has a multi-age group of girls, and what he essentially views Khan Academy is it frees him to spend more time with the girls. So they're all teaching other, working at their own pace. Most of class time they're actually doing projects, and Khan Academy is kind of giving that first scaffold, that first pass, and then he can look at the data and say, well, no, I need to go deeper with some of these students, or let me give them a more challenging problem now that I see that they have a little bit of proficiency here. So the general view is we're not dogmatic on how this definitely should be used. What we find exciting is we're putting this stuff out there. For some people, they're saying, hey, look, if you have trouble with what we're doing in class, here's another resource that might help you. We don't know. Other people are using it in a more integrated way. Other people are doing this flipped class, which it wasn't our idea. This is actually something that teachers have come to us and say, yeah, I want to use class in a more interactive way. I don't want to lecture anymore. I want to use it for problem solving. So I tell the students, if you find it useful, you might find there's this video library over there. And then what we're really excited about are the classrooms that are, the students are working at their own pace, so that when they come to class, they can kind of do more project-y type things.
You have had some criticism from teachers. One, what's the biggest misconception? And two, how much of the Khan program is actually teacher-driven in terms of you integrating their suggestions and ideas? Yeah,
so I think my guess is the biggest misconception is whenever someone sees virtual anything, they think it's at odds with the physical. Amazon.com, Barnes and Nobles, and from the beginning, we've been, no, it's not an either or. I have children, I want them to go to physical school, and they go to physical school, I don't want them to be passive. I want them to be active participants. I want them to know the teacher. So in our minds, it's all about how can we leverage technology, not superficially iPads in the room so everyone feels it's modern or whatever, but so that it's actually a more interactive experience. So it's not spent grading homework or lecturing, it's actually doing real world things. In terms of the teacher input, Khan Academy, for the most part, our team of 36 people, about a third of it is either people who directly work with teachers or teachers themselves or former teachers. We have 2 full-time people who are advising us. A teacher, we call them Khan Academy Fellows. One of them is Chris Talone, who's the teacher at Marlboro. Another one is Jesse Rowe, who's a teacher at Summit Prep. We have a postdoc at Stanford who's doing cognitive research using our data set. We have a team dedicated to interfacing with the teachers we're directly working with. We're about 50 teachers, and a lot of the dashboards and a lot of even the specs for the modules are directly coming from teachers. A lot of our videos, actually 600 of them, were spec'd out by the Monterey Institute of Technology and Education. And this is an education research group, and it was a lot of teachers who actually worked on it, error checked it, and make sure that this was kind of up to grade.
Well, there's a comment on Facebook that I'd like to read. This is from Tabish, who said, e-learning platforms like Khan Academy are the future of education, and this can change the world, literally so. And I'd like to speak to someone who's actually been a student of an online learning institution. That's Ankit in our Google Plus Hangout. Ankit, go ahead. And it looks like you might need to unmute your microphone.
Okay, got it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So, Salman, speaking as from the perspective of someone who's taken the online college courses, how do you think that that would fit into the future of online learning? Can we really revamp how people access education from beginning to end, especially continuing learning? Obviously, I've graduated from college, and so now I'm taking these courses. How do you see the change in now these are being available?
Yeah, and I think you're referring, we have a lot of stuff that's at that level, but now there's this whole thing they call Moocs, these massively, I think, online courses that Stanford, MIT, Harvard are doing, where it's not just videos, it's interaction, and it's also synchronous. You're with a cohort of people, and you have message boards, and you have this kind of group effect. And I think this work is tremendous that's happening. I mean, as we speak, a lot of us, we went to school, but now we're adults, and we have day jobs, and we have families, but we want to continue learning, and this gives us an outlet if we want to make sure our skills are sharp. And it takes this knowledge that used to be, behind these selective walls. Not everyone could get in, and even if you could get in, they're very expensive, and now they're bringing it out to everyone else. So, I've talked to some of the people running these Moocs, especially the one at MIT and Harvard, and they're telling us that they're finding talent all over the planet that can operate at the same level as an MIT student or a Harvard student, and it's really incredible.
Wow. Bob, question for you. So we've got Sal's exceptional and very noble vision for education, but I'm curious, by today's standards, how does that fit into the program for teachers? I'm thinking about standardized testing and No Child Left Behind, and are they constrained by this framework that they are within?
I would agree with that, Lisa. I would agree that what we've seen in sort of traditional school settings is that they are constrained to the standards and grade level standards, and moving the entire class along at the same pace to make sure by the time the April testing season comes around that kids are prepared to test well. And so teachers feel an obligation. It's also how they're being held accountable to meet those standards. And so there's a tension between the self-paced ideal and the potential for self-paced learning that doesn't acknowledge grades or age levels. With the reality that in 5th grade you're accountable to a certain set of standards, and the entire class has to be there. And so we see teachers trying to, even using online instructional resources like Khan Academy, they're integrating them into their curriculum and trying to move the class along at the same pace, making sure nobody falls behind. And that sort of limits the potential of those kids who would like to use these resources to go beyond the curriculum, maybe a grade level or 2 beyond. However, the teacher has other obligations that she's in learning objectives for the class she needs to meet.
Well, our community is interested in how we can broaden this out. There's a tweet here from Tabish who says, developing countries with poor education infrastructure must use Khan Academy tools. The results can be miraculous. Now, before you actually speak on that, Sal, I'd like to go to our Google Plus Hangout where Cheyenne has a comment, and Cheyenne is speaking to us from Massachusetts. Go ahead, Cheyenne.
Hi everyone. First of all, let me just tell you how much of an honor this is to be sharing screen with Sal Khan. I mean, Sal is an inspiration to all education innovators out there, or wannabe education innovators like me. So what I did, last year I spent a year in India, inspired partly by Sal. I took a year off and went back to India working for this education technology startup, and I coordinated their pilot programs. What we did is we took this software that we had, and we put videos, including some of Sal's own videos, and we put them in this low-income school, which had very, very poor conditions. So most of the students were actually 2 years, 3 years behind, but the way the education system has worked, they never failed a grade, but they were there. And we took it as an after-school program. We said, we went in, and then we realized that we had other things to worry about. Because you're talking about developing world context, things you have to worry about is, the computers, most of them were not functional. We thought we'll just go in and put the software in their lab. The computers didn't work. The network was, there was no bandwidth, so we had to make everything offline. and all these sets of problems. I mean, I agree with Tabisha's tweet that it's very it's gonna have a huge impact in developing world. But I was little, you know, the amount of problems that they're already there. How do we address those? And that's where my question to Sal is. Sal, how do you think you know, Khan Academy can go into the developing world, thinking of all these problems that exist? You don't have computers, you don't have bandwidth, and still make a change, and especially.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and jump in on that?
Yeah. No, I agree, and I don't know. I mean, we have some ideas. We've seen, and thank you for doing what you're doing in India. You know, there's a couple of cases we saw that worked out quite well. Obviously, if they have access to computers and broadband, it becomes simpler. Even then, you have to act language issues and whatever else. But we've had people who, at least the video library, it's not ideal just to have the video library, but they put it on DVDs and they take it to different places. They put it on thumb drives, so at least if the computers are offline or they're old refurbished PCs, they can still at least use the videos. We think the videos are a small part of what we do. You don't get the interactive part. There are people working offline versions of our interactive stuff. But we don't know. I mean, what we're hoping is many people like the gentleman actively experiment with this and see what is possible. And what we're really excited about is, you know, the language is a huge barrier, obviously. You know, I barely speak English, and so there's much less all of these other languages. And so we've had a translation effort, and I shouldn't say translation, a lot of the videos were redone in other languages, Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic, Bengali, Hindi, Urdu. And now you can actually start to see the translations as they get developed. If you go to the bottom of any page on Khan Academy, there's a little drop down and it says English. If you change it to Arabic, you will see the content in that language. It's just the video content right now. We haven't internationalized the entire site. But it gives us hope that at least that content, you could put it on DVDs, you could put it on thumb drives. It's available on BitTorrent. We want as many people to use it anywhere. And we hope to partner with these NGOs to see where we can get it.
I'm going to stop you there. We're going to continue this discussion in our online post show about the globalization of Khan Academy and the democratization of education via Khan. But until then, we're going to jump over to Malika, who has a few other leads that we're following.
Netizens in the Philippines are protesting a new cybercrimes law that could land them in jail for liking or sharing posts on Facebook. The hashtag No to Cybercrime law skyrocketed to more than 140,000 mentions. The new law makes cybersex, porn, and file sharing illegal. But the most contentious part of the law seems to be a provision making online libel a crime. Joseph tweets, not really against the cybercrime law, but they need to polish like provisions, especially on libel. Freedom of speech is one gift of democracy. Others targeted the president directly. You may silence us for now. Next year, we will silence you. Say goodbye to re-election, tweeted Norberto. Our next lead's out of the U.S., where a 16-year-old girl is believed to have faked her own kidnapping. The teen disappeared after tweeting this call for help on September 30th, implying there was an intruder. Netizens quickly got the hashtag #HelpFindKara trending worldwide. She tweeted that it was a joke, then quickly deleted it, but not before several people captured a screenshot. Local police found no evidence of kidnapping. Now netizens are using the hashtag tongue-in-cheek to criticize her. Abby writes, help find Kara a life. She scared half the nation. Kara's whereabouts are still unknown. A local paper says she was photographed buying a train ticket, leaving some worried. Who cares if Help Find Kara is a hoax and she ran away, tweets Jessica. Can we all stop hating and just pray she gets home and we find her? Well, we're tweeting out the links to both of those stories, so follow our feed at AJStream. Lisa?
All right, stay with us because the post show is next. It's streamed at aljazeera.com now on Wednesday. A look at the youth vote in this weekend's Venezuelan elections. Young people make up a third of the electorate there. So will they choose a future with or without President Hugo Chavez? Send us your thoughts on that, and until then, we'll see you online. Welcome to the Streams Post Show, where we're discussing the future of education, and here with us is Sal Khan. He's the founder and executive director of the Khan Academy. We were just talking about the global impact of the Khan Academy and its offline use even in developing countries in Asia and Africa and Latin America. What kind of feedback are you getting so far?
Yeah, you know, it's early. I mean, most of the feedback we've gotten has been on just on the mainstream site and people who have access to it via broadband because they can communicate with us. Probably the most interesting direct feedback we've gotten, there's a volunteer who works at Cisco Systems, an engineer, who's been taking offline versions of Khan Academy to orphanages in Mongolia and India. And in one orphanage in particular, he's done it, and he sent us pictures, and there's this girl, Zaya, a 15-year-old. When he set it up, she started using it, and now she's orphaned in Mongolia. She's become the prime translator of Khan Academy content into Mongolian.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, that by itself is a pretty incredible story, but we're starting to hear of pockets of that type of thing.
Speaking of translation, we've got a tweet from Tarek Abu Ghazala, and he says, can you please ask Sal if he would help us translate Khan Academy to Arabic so we can help Syrian refugee kids through unifying the ed?
Yeah, and he should, we already have an effort underway. He should email translations@khanacademy.org and be part of it. We already have several hundred videos translated into Arabic, but we need a lot more. And it's not translated. I shouldn't say that. It doesn't give credit to the people doing it. They're redoing the videos. Obviously in Arabic it's right to left, and there's different, you know, I use silly things that I learned in Louisiana, euphemisms and whatever else. So it's going to be a little different in the Middle East. So yeah, and we love that if he could be part of that effort.
Great.
Well, Bob, still not all of our community members are convinced. Wahid on Twitter says a total dependence on online learning will isolate those students who need teacher support and who have minimal parental involvement. There's another one from Skelly who says, while I've used online learning, I've never been inspired by or formed a personal connection with the teachers behind the screen. And one more from Justin who asks, how do we buck the societal stigma that you need a formal education, i.e. brick and mortar, to succeed or move forward in life? Are those some of the things that you're thinking about in your metrics of evaluating Khan Academy?
I mean, yeah, around the total independence on online learning, particularly Khan Academy and other we consider Khan Academy a blended learning model that's integrating online instruction with teacher-led instruction and activities. So it's never independent of teachers. Khan Academy. Regarding online courses, we know that there's a fairly high dropout rate for online courses. I think online courses take a certain amount of perseverance. Anybody who's taken an online course or a driving school course can attest to that. But I don't think that's what Sal Khan is talking about. I don't think that's the vision. There's certainly independent online learning in areas where there are no teachers, there are no courses available. You're going to be more dependent on the online resources and any support, including a teacher that may come along with it. But I agree with Sal. I think the best use of these resources are with adult support, particularly in the K-12 age group. Having adult support and working with students who need extra support in order to succeed in the online environment.
So Sal, you would really call that blended learning then, right?
Yeah, I didn't come up with that, but yeah, that's what people are now calling blended learning.
Well, I think I read something where you were saying, had you been asked a couple of years ago how long it would take blended learning to really get some traction, you would say 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think what was surprising about all of this is that it's very easy when you read the press to become cynical about what's going on and can we ever move the dial forward. But the last at least 2 years for us, we've been shocked by the traction, the feedback we've gotten from teachers. We're in 20,000 classrooms, and there's other initiatives underway. There are schools being formed around models like this. They're seeing really good results. So yeah, I'm very optimistic that, and it's not just blended learning. It's the whole model of now's our moment in history to rethink this Prussian model that we inherited, and it could use technology, or it could be very human, very physical things. But I see it happening.
Well, speaking of those varying educational models, there's a follow-up question from our Google Plus Hangout. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned using video lectures as a first pass or a first scaffold for a classroom, but what we see in high-performing countries around the world is that they use video lectures or lectures as a second pass. in response to student need or problem they're doing or something engaging. I'm curious how we could replicate those models using Khan Academy.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, that was really just an example of how it's being used. And every class, for every physical classroom, there's stuff that goes on before and after it. So it's kind of semantics to say whether something is going on before the class or after the class. The way we think of it, it's really scaffolded learning, which is kind of the ed speak for. There's multiple facets, you layer it on it, but when you go to the physical environment, I completely agree with Dan. That should be the time where students are struggling with things that are far beyond what they're getting online. And it's not like the online gives you a lecture and then you go to class and you do a simple problem. Maybe the online gives you the basics of what an angle is, or gives you the basics of some of your basic tools, and then you can use those tools to tackle something much deeper. Or maybe you tackle the deeper thing first, and you don't even know what an angle is, and you don't know any of this stuff. And then because you're struggling with that problem, you're motivated then to go find tools, whether it's Khan Academy or a textbook or ask the teacher or whatever. So we're not kind of religious on this. What the underlying thing is, we want to see what works. We want to hear from teachers. And if we see it's working better in certain cases where the students are struggling with the concept first and they've had absolutely no exposure to it, and that motivates them to get the knowledge from online, that's awesome. In other use cases, if the students are getting their tools first and then they can use those tools to tackle harder problems, that's great too.
It seems like this really gives the teacher an opportunity to target his or her teaching toward a student. It almost elevates the teacher to a place that's not so robotic every day. They're using their skills and their knowledge to help each student individually.
Yeah, I mean, one of the feedback we got from an incredible teacher, Courtney, who we worked with in Los Altos that first year, and now she's going to become principal of a school, is this was the first time that every day was different. Yeah. Every day in her classroom was different. The students appreciated that. She appreciated that. And every year was different. And she was able to learn, and she was able to cater to the needs of students individually, which was otherwise impossible when you had a large class.
Mm-hmm. There's a video comment here from someone who's a little bit more skeptical. Have a listen.
This is Amy in Brooklyn, and I've used online learning before, but I've never been inspired by any of my online teachers, nor have I formed personal connections with them. And my question is, how can online teachers replicate the multiple roles that the best teachers play in person for students, aka mentors, parents, and friends?
That's a great question, and I think it hits the core of what we believe in. Online will never replicate the best facets of what that in-person teacher do, the mentoring, the inspiration. And what it can do, though, is it can free that person to do more of that, more of the stuff that the human being is good at the one-on-one connection, and maybe just be an extra scaffold on if someone is, let's say, weak on something, they're afraid to ask about it, or they want another review, or they might have zoned out a little bit when that thing was covered. Mm-hmm. It gives that extra support. But everything I believe in, this is what I want for my own children, is I want their teachers to be fully engaged on the exact things that she talked about: the inspiration, the mentorship, the creativity, the taking them to another place, the challenging them, and hopefully these tools like what we're working on, and we're at very early stages, we have a lot of ways to improve. They can only empower the teacher to do more of that.
Bob, I think you want to jump in here.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Dan's question as well, and add to what Sal was saying. We are seeing teachers use the videos and exercises in a tremendous variety of ways. There is no mandated use of the materials. Teachers are really learning, particularly in the sites that we're working with. They're really learning what's best for their students and what's best for them as a teacher in terms of when to use the videos, how to use the exercises, how to sequence videos, using videos and exercises within projects to scaffold the skills and knowledge and learning that's required for students to fully engage projects. So there's no one model, and I think that's what Sal was saying.
Yep.
It's at the full discretion of the teachers.
And on that note, we are going to have to close our show. Bob Murphy and Sal Khan, founder of the Khan Academy, thank you so much for joining us. His book, The One World Schoolhouse, Education Reimagined, out today. Now, on Wednesday, a look at the youth vote in the weekend's Venezuelan elections. Young people make up a third of the electorate there. So will they choose a future with or without President Hugo Chavez? Send us your thoughts on that. And until then, we'll see you online.